What is up? Welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime on this Tuesday night. Mavericks game day. By the way, welcome to the show. Tonight we will discuss. Oh man, I didn't even change the overlay. There you go. There you go. We will discuss Dak Prescott being named the quarterback under the most pressure by an NFL analyst from ESPN and his rankings, and whether that's unfair or fair for the Dallas Cowboys quarterback. We will get into who do we believe is actually the quarterback under the most pressure. Also, some news around the NFL. Tom Brady is going to be back after he's done playing on our TVs. He will be analyzing games and he will be getting paid to do so. And last but not least, we will leave the show with some score predictions for the Mavericks game tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in to the show. Make sure that you hit the like button, share the stream if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Remember, every like allows us to put this show in front of more Cowboys fans as we continue to grow the ADC Sports Dallas community. So, without any further ado, let's get this show started. Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome into ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network, with a lot more content coming your way throughout the entire offseason. Make sure that you check out adcsports.com/Dallas. Primetime, as always, brought to you by our friends over at freemanmazda.net, and we will talk more about them and the ride of the week in a few moments here on the show. Tonight, we will talk about Dak Prescott being named the quarterback under the most pressure for 2022 by an ESPN analyst. Is that fair? Is that unfair? We'll get into it all in a few moments here on the show. But before we do that, let me shout out some people here in the YouTube chat and, of course, the Facebook chat. What is up, Joey Vela over at Facebook? Ryan Doyle, today is indeed Mother's Day in Mexico. So if there are any mothers watching from Mexico, happy Mother's Day to you. We have the streak had to end. At some point, the streak had to come to an end because just like Sky and the jokes that they make about him with the baby face and all of that, we get that on primetime, of course, from a different perspective, right? Because our ages are different. But shout out to George saying, how old are you? About 12, close enough. And by close enough, I mean about 10 years off. But hey, I do look younger. I'm 22 years old. Shout out to George and welcome into the show. Nicholas says regarding Dak Prescott, he has a lot to prove to his fans and win some meaningful games. What is up, Tommy, Steven, Charlene, Evans? Thank you guys for being here tonight. Make sure that you hit the like button. Tommy, thank you. I will let her know that you said Happy Mother's Day to your mom, Mauricio. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the show tonight. So let's talk about what happened. Because, hey, if you're on Cowboys Twitter, if you spend some time there, you probably know who the ESPN analyst is that said this about Dak Prescott. Because Dan Orlovsky was on Rich Eisen's show today, and he was asked, or he put together a list, actually, I believe, for ESPN, and then they discussed it over on Rich Eisen's show. And he said that Dak Prescott was number one on his list for quarterbacks under the most pressure during the 2022 season. And that was kind of a surprise, to be honest. I understand, and we'll get to that too. I understand the arguments of a $40 million contract question. I can understand the pressure of being one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league and the question marks that will come up when you lose a home playoff game versus the San Francisco 49ers while putting 17 points on the board. I understand all of that questions. Dan Orlovsky said, it's go time. It's time to prove that that was the right investment for the Dallas Cowboys regarding the $40 million per year contract that the Cowboys signed Dak Prescott to. However, and this is a question that I will bring up to you guys over at Facebook and YouTube. Is it fair or unfair to name Prescott the most pressured quarterback in the NFL? While you give me your answers, and before I give you mine, shout out to Ryan Doyle there in the chat. uh, Let me talk to you about our friends over at freemanmazda.net, because the ride of the week is the new 2022 Mazda CX-30. It starts at $29,515. It comes with Apple CarPlay / Android Auto, adaptive cruise control, all-wheel drive, rain sensing wipers, and the comfort and the useful Wi-Fi hotspot. A game changer. Your vehicle with a Wi-Fi hotspot. Think about that. You can check out the Mazda CX-30 over at freemanmazda.net, a family-owned business for over 65 years. You get A+ customer service plus a wide range of new Mazda vehicles. Once more, that is freemanmazda.net. Some of your answers here. Is it fair or unfair to name Dak Prescott the most pressured quarterback in the NFL? Toxic Tom says unfair. Tommy915 goes with very fair. Adrian goes with fair. Charlene Evans, Ernest says yes, he is. He has to step up his game and do more fast breaks. Go Cowboys. Nicholas also goes with fair. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. I am pretty surprised at the answers tonight. Jessica Villarreal goes with fair. Gilbert says unfair. Gregory goes with unfair. So maybe it got a little bit more balanced there towards the end in the answers. But I'm pretty surprised that there were so many fair answers out there. Because I gotta tell you, my answer will be unfair. And again, I understand. 40 million per year, you want a team that wins playoff games. However, don't we make too much out of the QB win stat when it comes to the quarterback position? Because we know that the team is also involved in all of it. And I know that this might be an overblown example of things, but we've talked about Matthew Stafford enough, for example, in 2021. The quarterback that had no wins versus winning teams and then just changed teams, and suddenly it turned out that he could beat winning teams and he could get a Super Bowl ring and all of that. I understand that maybe Dak Prescott is under some level of pressure. I, however, believe that it's a little bit overblown to name him number one in this kind of list. First and foremost, because of the contract situation. It's not like Dak Prescott is at any sort of danger of not being the quarterback for the upcoming 2 seasons for the Cowboys when it's not viable at all to release him. It's not until 2024 when the Cowboys could actually save more than $1, and that would be $12 million in 2024 if they release him, which seems unlikely because you would guess that some team would be willing to pick up the phone and make a trade offer for him, maybe. There's that, first and foremost. That would be my opening statement to explain why I believe it's unfair to put Dak Prescott on such a stage. Number 2 is we've seen the Cowboys being too high on Dak Prescott. We have not heard the front office basically throw Dak Prescott under the bus at all, or we have not heard the front office hesitate even remotely on who is their starting quarterback and their number one guy. And then there comes the other quarterbacks around the league. So you're telling me that Prescott, who was who had an offense that was downgraded this offseason by taking Amari Cooper out of the equation and the starting Pro Bowler right tackle out of the equation in Lyle Collins, he has more pressure than Jalen Hurts, the guy that just got A.J. Brown, for example, or Tua Tagovailoa, who got Tyreek Hill on a trades that they invested a lot in, and even Zach Wilson for the New York Jets. They had a kind of a historic draft for New York, and Zach Wilson, it feels like he needs to show New York something if he's going to be the answer at quarterback for the Jets, because now it seems like there will be a team around him, not a Super Bowl contending team or anything like that, but there will be work for Zach Wilson. And the same for Jalen Hurts, and the same for Tua. I actually think that Aaron Rodgers is also way too high on Dan Orlovsky's list. Aaron Rodgers is not in that much pressure, in my opinion. But even with Aaron, you know that he's in a later stage of his career as opposed to Dak Prescott, who is more or less in that prime portion of a quarterback's career when he is nearing 30. He's 28 years old right now, will be 29 when the season starts, as opposed to Aaron Rodgers that is closer to retirement and that has Jordan Love on the sidelines waiting for the moment, right? Even though the Jordan Love storyline feels like it's getting a little bit old. So maybe I understand the part of the contract for Dak. I think it's kind of a reach to name him the most pressured quarterback. I think it's kind of a reach to put him somewhere in the top 3. I'm surprised that even Kirk Cousins is not on that list. A surprise to me, and even more surprised that we got a lot of fair answers in the show. But hey, that's what sports are for. We love disagreements and we love sports debates. Michael says quarterbacks and coaches get too much credit and too much blame. Guru says Jerry will more likely blame the coaches than blame the franchise high-paid quarterback. Gregory says that he agrees with what we have been saying. Primetime Field says that it's fair. Ryan says Dak Prescott should feel the pressure. We haven't been to a Super Bowl in over 25 years, and me as a diehard Cowboys fan ain't getting any younger. I'm freaking getting old, Mo. Now, Ryan, that's fair. I think that if we're talking about the pressure to win the Super Bowl, maybe that's where you could make the case that Dak Prescott is indeed feeling that sort of pressure from a fan perspective, in which you say, yeah, it's time for this franchise to get a freaking Lombardi trophy again. However, when we talk about quarterbacks under the most pressure, I get the impression that we're discussing guys whose jobs are at risk, whose teams are seeking immediate results before they reach a decision-making process in which the quarterback's future is at stake. Lumen says unfair. Hey, maybe even Ryan Tannehill is, and I remember this because of Lumen. Maybe even Ryan Tannehill is under most pressure just because they got Malik Willis in the 3rd round. Who's going to and that's another thing. There's no one threatening Dak Prescott's job with the Cowboys. And even if there was some sort of high draft pick in Dallas, you would hesitate to say that they're competing with him because of the contract. Carson Wentz, says Michael. You could also throw Carson Wentz in that conversation of the most pressure, specifically because you could make the case for him to be in that scenario in which the pressure is not only about staying in his current team, the Washington Commanders, but sticking around as a starting NFL quarterback, because it starts to feel like if it doesn't work out in Washington, it's not going to work out anywhere else. And then Wentz might enter this portion of his career in which he's thought of more as a backup than a starting quarterback. So there's that. Toxic Tom says, I swear that Dan Orlovsky is a secret lover of Carson Wentz. And then there's that, right? Like, I actually think, and I've said this before on the show, I actually think that Orlovsky, he's a pretty good analyst when it comes to pretty much anything else. But it does feel to me like it's reached a point in which there's a bias against Dak Prescott. But other than that, when you listen to Dan Orlovsky talk X's and O's, for example, or when he posts this all 22 kind of clips to his Twitter account, or he does it over at ESPN, that's good content. But when it comes to Dak Prescott and where he ranks in the league, it's a little bit, it's a little bit weird. Gregory says, Mo, the biggest pressure Dak has is trying to win a Super Bowl with a team that is managed by idiots, says Gregory. But hey, although Gregory just had that great punchline waiting, let's make the case for Dak Prescott being under that high pressure. The other quarterbacks on the list beyond Aaron Rodgers, like Tua, Jalen, and Zach Wilson, don't have to necessarily find postseason success to call their 2022 seasons a success itself, right? So, like, if Zach Wilson shows some signs of progress in 2022, then that's a successful season. If the Eagles win the NFC East, that's a successful season. If Tua and the Dolphins get somewhere in the conversation, make it as a wild card team in an AFC that's highly competitive and filled with high caliber quarterbacks, then that's a successful season for Tua. Assuming they also play well, not only that their teams are winning bowl games, because once again, quarterback wins is not a stat. And with Dak, it's different. With Dak, it's not about winning the NFC East. It's about going into the NFL playoffs and actually making some damage, doing some damage, excuse me. So there, I could look at it from that perspective and say there's some level of pressure there. Still think it's a reach to call him the quarterback under the most pressure. Primetime Phil says Dan is the same quarterback that ran out of the back of the end zone trying to throw a pass. He has no room to talk. Now, although that's funny, and it's always there in the replies to Dan Orlovsky, I do think he has room to talk. And I know I might be in the minority here, but it's like, and this is maybe a drastic example, but how many coaches didn't play top level football or football at all in the NFL, right? Or they played sort of this backup roles in the NFL. You have, of course, JT O'Sullivan, for example, sharing his tremendous insight and analysis over at the QB school, and he was a backup journeyman through most of his career. So I do think that even if you didn't play at that high level in the NFL, you have some room to talk, but that's always a fun joke that people throw Dan Orlovsky's way for sure. And that's probably how Primetime Field meant it, but it's still something that I always like to address in that sense. Now, the second question from me, and this is still on that topic, who's the quarterback under the most pressure in the NFL? If you had to pick one. Some of you might pick Dak Prescott because some of you did agree with Dan Orlovsky's take. But I wonder, whose quarterback do you believe is actually under the most pressure in 2022? So that was the top 5 for Dan Orlovsky, the one that they discussed over at Rich Eisen's show. He had Prescott at number 1, Aaron Rodgers at number 2, Tua number 3, Jalen Hurts number 4, and Zach Wilson number 5. And then you can also throw maybe Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, like we've said. I know, and I don't remember who brought that name up. Someone said Trevor Lawrence. I don't think that's the case. Oh, that's a good one. MJ says Goff. Primetime Field says also Goff in Detroit. Michael, so Goff a popular answer tonight. That one is a good one. Daniel Jones. How about Daniel Jones by Toxic Tom and Daniel Jones, and the Guru, excuse me. Tua and Dak says Nicholas. Lumen goes with Tannehill. Actually, this is coming from a Titans fan. Kenneth Fraser saying Josh Allen. Ryan Tannehill for Jessica. Samuel Rowe also goes with Jessica. I will actually kind of go. I will go with Jalen Hurts. That will be my official answer because they got him AJ Brown. They have a decent team. Last season it was Devontae Smith. So basically, back-to-back first-round wide receiver picks. And of course, that's not completely accurate because AJ Brown wasn't a pick himself, but it's even better than a first-round pick. Because forget about the financial side of things for a moment. That will not make or break Jalen Hurts' 2022 season. He will be on the field, and it's up to Hurts to make it worth it. That would be my number one with Jalen Hurts. And then my number two will be Tua because they got, of course, Tyreek Hill, but also there was all of this Brian Flores drama. Mike McDaniel comes into Miami as a head coach, as an offensive architect. And I don't know if that actually buys him a little bit of time. The fact that he will play with his head coach for the first time in his career. And there's been a lot of changes in Tua's career so far, not only coaching-wise, but personal-wise. And there was the Fitzpatrick Tua season, which is weird. So maybe Tua is a close number two for me. And Daniel Jones, I think that was actually a pretty good answer. I had not thought of him, but the Guru brought him up, and Toxic Tom also did. And I think that's also a good answer. Like, there are a lot of good answers that I would think of before Dak Prescott. I would put Hurts, Tagovailoa, Zach Wilson, Ryan Tannehill, Daniel Jones, all of them before I would add Dak Prescott to the list. Even Kirk Cousins. Toxic Tom says, by the way, the Rich Eisen show is an underrated show. So here's what happens to me. Sometimes I go through his Twitter account. I'm a Rich Eisen fan. I will say this right off the bat. I'm a Rich Eisen fan because, you look at NFL Network and all of these sports shows, and a lot of the guys there are former players, former coaches, and guys that were in the game, right? And with Rich Eisen, he's more of your traditional sports journalist. And I've always loved that about him. But I agree with Toxic Tom. And I will say that's an underrated show that even I don't listen to, even though I know that it's an underrated show. And maybe it's about the fact that they're a little bit long because they're like 3 hours long, if I'm not mistaken. So if you don't catch it while it's happening, like a on the background kind of show while you're doing your thing, I don't really follow it that close. But you know what I'm actually going to do. And I do this with plenty of podcasts. Everyone is different. There are some people that will subscribe to podcasts and listen to them religiously. And I know that some of you guys listen to the ADC Sports shows, both in the morning and the primetime show, religiously. And shout out to you. Thank you for that. But what I will do is that I listen to one show religiously. There's one show that I don't miss. And it's not even football related. And then I follow like a ton of sports podcasts, and I will pick and choose depending on the topic of each show. Oh, Primetime Phil. I have a take on Joe Buck. Primetime Phil says, I dislike Joe Buck. I have a take on Joe Buck. And this is not meant to be like the most take heavy primetime show of the week, but it's kind of turning out to be so. But I'm all in Joe Buck. Joe Buck is a Hall of Famer play-by-play announcer, baseball, football. I think he's one of the greats, and I think a lot of people, and I'm not saying primetime Phil, but I'm saying that a lot of people just hate Joe Buck because Twitter told them to hate Joe Buck. But I'm a fan. I follow a lot of play-by-play announcers that I like a lot. Toxic Tom says Mo loves Joe Rogan. I bet. Oh, that's not the podcast. That's not the podcast that I was talking about. However, it is MMA. It is an MMA show. So that was random from Toxic Tom. Michael says Dak has at least 2 years before he needs to worry. I would agree with that. Charlene Evans saying, I love Joe Buck announcing the World Series games. I like that too. I love Joe Buck in baseball. I've actually read his book, and it's a pretty good book. And I think that when you read that one, if you guys would like to, you will like Joe Buck way better. By the way, he will do like this sort of Manning cast style broadcast for the PGA Championship. So if you guys are into baseball, that will be a fun game to watch the PGA Championship. I cannot wait to watch it that way because sometimes golf broadcasts, even though I like golf, they can turn a little bit boring if the score leaderboard itself is not close. So I'm looking forward to listening to that Joe Buck cast. That's sort of like with that Peyton Manning vibe. Just like Gus Johnson for college basketball, dude is incredible, says Toxic Tom. Primetime Field says, my ears dislike him, not Twitter. LOL. He is good with baseball, though. There you go. I love Joe Buck. I'm a fan. What can I say? I'm actually a little bit disappointed that he will be calling the Monday night games now with Troy Aikman over at ESPN because I loved that Joe Buck called a lot of Cowboys games. They called a lot of NFC America's Game of the Week games, and now that's not going to happen. He will call the Monday night games, and now I will be turned between listening to the Joe Buck broadcast or the Peyton Eli Manning broadcast. So that will be a tough call. Now, this is actually the perfect segue into the next topic, because how about Tom Brady? Tom Brady will be Fox TV analyst when his playing days are over, and he will be getting paid more than any other TV analyst, at least to the date. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on this. Yes or no, will Tom Brady be a good TV analyst? Because my let's call him a colleague, Buck Rising, the guy that hosts, the legend that hosts the primetime show over at Nashville for ADC Sports. He had the perfect title for his show tonight. I would believe he's actually live right now. His show is named Tom Brady Rigged the NFL System to Get a Raise After He Retires. How about Tom Brady getting $37.5 million to call games? Now, that's why I wanted to bring this one up. MJ goes with an all caps no. Tom Brady will not be a good TV analyst. Gregory goes with no. Dario goes with no. Toxic Tom, I see what you did there, man. He is very good with cameras. Oh, man. I bet Brady will be a good announcer, says Gabriel. Gilbert goes with a no. I agree with Gabriel here. I think he will kill it. I think that Tom Brady will be pretty good at his new gig whenever the time may be. I also think that it's an additional clue that this is in fact for real 2.0 final version, his final year in the NFL. And I say it that way because you never know with Tom Brady. You never know if one more season will force him into another season, so on and so forth. But I think there are two major clues that tell us that this is it for Tom Brady. 2022, it's this time for real, his last rodeo in the NFL. Number one, he's not reached that 1-year extension with the Tampa Bay Bucks. The reason why he leaves New England originally is because they wouldn't guarantee him that second year in his contract. He gets to Tampa Bay. They give him that deal. Then for another year, then in his second year, they give him another year to keep him on that 2-year sort of guaranteed contract. Now that has not happened. So there's only 1 year left on his deal. And then we get this information from Fox, and it feels like Fox wouldn't want to wait around on Tom Brady, or wouldn't commit that much money if they didn't have some sort of certainty of when it was actually going to take place. Maybe I'm speculating too much, but it feels like a guarantee that this is it for Tom Brady. Now, that being said, I think that the Tampa Bay version of Tom Brady that we've come to meet as NFL fans through Instagram, through Twitter, and through many other events, like even the golf tournaments that they've done with famous NFL players, he's a pretty fun guy. I hate to break it to you guys that are Tom Brady haters, but he is a pretty fun guy. And you listen to him on interviews. There was that barbershop interview that he did. I don't know. I don't remember if it was from HBO. Then there was, of course, the time that he was on the Manning cast. There was the Man in the Arena show. We've seen a lot of examples of Tom Brady just talking to people in a friendly way, and you know that the insight will be there. Listening to the Manning cast, for example, has been just mind-blowing, because not only do you get the usual color analysis on the game that you're watching, but you will get it in real time, like if he's one of the guys talking to you and giving you some insight. I don't know that Tom Brady will do that. Probably not. But I think the amount of insight that he will provide is just insane. Daddy says he'll be boring calling games. MJ says Gronkowski was worse. And sometimes you get these sort of ideas of how a player will fare on that TV booth. Oh, you know who struggled? I hate to say this, but Jason Witten, man. Jason Witten. And Chevy actually just brought him up. Tom Brady would suck like Jason Witten did. LOL. Not hating on Jason, but he did. Yeah, Witten is my all-time favorite Cowboy. I'm a 22-year-old fan, so, don't hate on me. I didn't get to watch Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman, and all of them. But I will say that he did suck on that TV booth. That being said, Tom Brady's pretty different, though, isn't he, from Jason Witten? I think that we've come to discover that. Even singing Alexander Hamilton with James Corder on that golf cart is an example of how fun Tom Brady seems to be. It's about time Tom Brady retired. Good riddance. Well, even though I believe that will be the case, let's not make it like an official statement, because we've been burned. We've been down this road before. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick doing play-by-play. That would be a great duo, says Ryan Doyle. Could actually end up being, at least for if they did it for a one-time occasion, that would be fun. Of course, you do need a play-by-play guy, because otherwise that might be a little bit bad, or you need to do it in a Manning cast sort of style. But anyways, Tom Brady, man, he just keeps winning. Some way, somehow, he keeps winning. Before we get out of here, we've got a Mavericks game tonight. Mavericks versus the Phoenix Suns. Drop your Mavs Suns prediction on the comments. What's your scoreboard prediction for the game? And by the way, I will take this opportunity to give my guy Ian some love on the ADC Sports Dallas platform, on your favorite podcast platforms. You can find ADC Sports Dallas. You can catch Skywalker Steele's morning show there. You can catch Primetime in there. And you can also catch ADC Sports Maps. And Ian has you covered with Dallas Mavericks content, as he does also for the site with grading content. So make sure you check that out as well. Drop your Mavs Suns prediction. 114-109 Maps, says Tommy915. Gambler score or actual score, says Toxic Tom, whichever you prefer. I took the +6. I took it in a, fan kind of way. I'm not going to act like a basketball analyst here on the show, but I took the Mavs +6. MJ says, after Chris Paul's worst performance on Mother's Day, Mavericks will win. I'm going with a 105, 103 Mavs. So maybe a little bit of a low scoring affair, but give me the Mavericks tonight. Let's go Mavs. Let's go Mavs. Thank you guys for tuning into the show tonight. Ryan Doyle is going with the over, and what an over, 137, 123. Are we going to overtime? Ryan Doyle, thank you for your prediction. Gregory says Mavs win by 3. Maverick 106 for Gilbert. The Suns 100. All right. Thank you for tuning into the show tonight. Make sure that you hit the like button, share the stream. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, let your friends know about ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Every like allows us to put this show in front of more Cowboys fans. Primetime, as always, brought to you by our friends over at FreemanMazda.net, a family-owned business for over 65 years, A+ customer service, and of course, a wide range of new Mazda vehicles. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your support. And I will see you tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central. Make sure you check out adcsports.com/Dallas.